As you watch this video, I ask you to think about the following two questions. Will old cases of false accusers who were not prosecuted for lying be reopened? And will cases of male victims of sexual crimes by women be reopened? Before you jump to an answer, make sure you are making a properly informed conclusion. Watch the video, follow the links in the description box below, and do your research. Things began to inspire this video today. First, there was the email from change.org with a petition to have judges better trained to convict males who are accused. It appears this petition has captured the emotions of many people because many people have signed it. I signed it only to have the opportunity to make the truth known, hopefully, but doubtful, that the truth reaches even a few people, changing their minds to sign. The whole petition is a fraud which is gaining support. For those who do not know what this is about abolishing due process of the court system, presuming a male is guilty regardless, and no accountability for females who are false accusers. This is not an exaggeration, this is reality. The whole petition is based on false narratives. For example, Judge Camp's comment asking the alleged victim why she didn't keep her knees together. A comment taken so far out of context, this new context has no basis in reality. The accused male was found not guilty, which caused an uproar with feminists. The judge lost his job, and the male was retried by a new judge via feminist mob pressure. It should be noted the second judge also found the male not guilty. Both judges found the male not guilty not because of the comment that was taken out of context, implying it was the female's fault she was allegedly raped, but rather because both judges said the female was lying because she gave different accounts to what allegedly happened. The false narrative of the comment, why she didn't keep her knees together, is simply repeated, evoking stupid people's emotions until it is accepted as true. The same type of thing with my ongoing case, with false narratives being repeated and my defending against them. Later this same day, I overheard the 6 o'clock news, where they were talking about the local police reopening old sexual assault cases that were deemed without merit. Reopening so many old cases implies the police at the time of dismissing cases were not competent for whatever reason. If this be true, then every single case on every topic, with convictions or innocence, must be reopened, as nothing they did in the past can be trusted. I discuss this further in other videos. Here is where the concern is, for anyone, including me, who has been falsely accused. Changing the criteria of the investigation. For example, before, if the female gave conflicting stories to an alleged event, the case was not pursued. A change today may find it acceptable that a female gives conflicting accounts to what allegedly happened. Another example could be the type of evidence changing from acceptable to not, such as text messages, audio recordings, and such. So where is the line drawn with the type of cases that this will apply to? Today we look back on how societies conducted themselves, say with laws. We look back wondering how did they ever get to that insane point in society? For example, thinking about the Salem witch trials, we see how they mixed superstition with law and found test and punishment that made no sense. We are not far from being the same today, as we have lost our way. We are no longer a civilized people. We are devolving socially, seeking mob-rule justice. I also discuss this in other videos. The foundation for this nonsense of reopening cases is the Philadelphia model, based on the feminist narrative. Like the make-believe from the past, feminists have created their own magical and mystical world of bullshit. The said project alleges that rape was downgraded to a non-criminal category in one jurisdiction around 50 years ago, which, even if true, is not the case today. However, it appears the push is to have everything deemed as a serious crime. For example, a touch on the hand being deemed as rape. On a side note, we observe the same with, for example, police, when everything against them is deemed a serious crime. The focus in the Philadelphia model is on one serial rapist who ended up killing a woman. The female narrative paints all men with a broad brush. There is no mention of females being the perpetrators of sexual crimes in this model, only men, because of the feminist narrative being behind the magical, mystical world of bullshit. Now, before I get into the next part of this video, which I will be reading parts to highlight points of a very long article and reports, I would like to lead in by saying, made to penetrate is not in the same category as rape, thus skewing the numbers. Made to penetrate is when someone, a male or female, is made to penetrate someone against their will. The definition of female rape and male rape are essentially the same, with one being penetrated and the other being forced to penetrate, or being penetrated in other ways. Made to penetrate is a key term omitted in the common feminist narrative. But there are other facts that skew the numbers as well, such as women raping women, women using men's help to rape men and other women, female pedophilia, and females who have sex with the legally underage. On a side note, feminine violence against men via proxy using other men is also never discussed. The Center for Disease Control, CDC, data finds many, if not more, male victims of female rape than female victims of rapes by males, and the CDC ignores its own data. The National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Survey, NISVS, will also be referenced when I read from the article and reports. In 2010 to 2012, 1.2 estimated 1,473,000 of USA women experienced some sort of rape by men. What is ignored is, for the same time period, 1.7, an estimated 1,715,000 USA men experienced some sort of rape by women. It should be noted the number of male victims increased by an estimated count of 740,000 in 2012. However, this percentage of female perpetrator rises as much as the data is skewed. In other words, the accepted data used shows almost equal, so imagine what the data would show when not skewed. Now, I'm going to read some quotes from the article, which also includes quotes from the official reports. Quote, the CDC even outright admits that its decision to not classify made to penetrate as rape is on shaky ground. 5.9%, or an estimated 6.8 million men, have been made sexually to penetrate someone else at some point in their life, a form of sexual violence that may in practice field consider to be rape. Quote, now look at yearly female rape victimization rates in Table 2.1 on page 18. The male rate of made to penetrate victimization is equal to the female rate of rape victimization. But what is made to penetrate? Quote, vast majority of made to penetrate perpetrators are female. The NVSIS finds that 79.2% of male victims reported only female perpetrators. Full report 24. That's over 1 million rape victims of female rapists the CDC decided weren't rape victims. The number of female perpetrators may be even higher. Notice the CDC wrote only female perpetrators. This makes me think the remaining 11.8% of male victims may have reported either only male or both male and female perpetrators. Quote, it quickly starts to seem that the NISVS was intentionally designed to specifically exclude male victims of female rapists from its rape statistics. Quote, one theory is the influence of Mary Ross, the infamous architect of the flawed 1984 misreport, which claimed that 1 in 4 college women are victims of rape, even though 72% of her quote-unquote rape victims maintained that they were not raped. Although consideration of male victims is within the scope of the legal statutes, it is important to restrict the term rape to instances where male victims were penetrated by offenders. It is inappropriate to consider a rape victim a man who engages in unwanted sexual intercourse with a woman. Quote, look how the NISVS executive summary summarizes findings on psychological aggression as nearly half of all women and men in the United States have experienced psychological aggression by an intimate partner in their lifetime, 48.4% and 48.8% respectively. The executive summary neglects to mention that men report a much greater rate of psychological aggression victimization in at least 12 months, 18.1% of men compared to 13.9% of women. Quote, Koss, previously researched, was quick to label women as rape victims. Her radio interview shows she does not have the same opinion of male rape victims. Not only does Mary Koss deny that male victims of female rapists are similarly traumatized by their experience, but she claims that these men aren't rape victims at all. There are going to be two people in the following. A gentleman by the name of Fong interviewing Koss. Fong, for the men who are traumatized by their experiences because they were forced against their will to vaginally penetrate a woman like Koss, how would that happen? By force, threat of force, or when the victim is unable to consent? How would that happen? Fong, I'm actually speaking to someone right now. His story is that he was drugged. He was unconscious, and when he awoke, a woman was on top of him with his penis inserted inside of her vagina. For him, that was traumatizing. Koss, yeah? Fong, if he was drugged, what would that be called? Koss, what would I call it? I would call it unwanted contact. Fong, just unwanted contact? Period? Koss, yeah. This next part is a summary from the article discussing the report. Quote, the NISVS found victimization numbers suspiciously much higher than comparable government surveys on sexual assault. The NISVS survey methods seem questionable, if not outright flawed. Deceptive and unclear questions could have easily been caused non-victims to be classified as victims. NISVS publications focus on useless, inflammatory lifetime statistics instead of more useful and accurate yearly stats. I suspect it's because the lifetime data tends to show greater female victimization, while the yearly data tends to show more even victimization rates between the sexes. The NISVS makes no real effort to establish control or chart the time frame on its lifetime data. This makes it useless for charting trends in victimization or predicating future victimization. Furthermore, asking people about victimizations further back in the past makes it more likely they will misremember events, especially when faced with leading and deceptive survey questions. The NISVS continued to exclude victims of made to penetrate from its definition of rape, even though it fits the reasonable definition of rape, being physically forced to have penetrated sex against your will. The CDC has been heavily criticized by men's rights activists for this move. The CDC's response to exactly why they have excluded made to penetrate from rape have been lackluster and evasive. Although the overwhelming number of male victims report female perpetrators of made to penetrate by excluding made to penetrate from its definition of rape, the CDC can claim male victims of rape mostly reported male perpetrators. Thus, rape can continue to be portrayed as a crime with only male perpetrators. Despite being widely quoted by both politicians and media, both the CDC and mainstream media have largely ignored the NISVS shocking and noteworthy findings on male rape victims to such an extent it seems like the CDC is trying to intentionally play them down or actively cover them up. Feminist research Mary Koss has publicly stated that she believes male victims of female rapists should be excluded from the definition of rape. She offers no solid justification for this. I strongly suspect it is because it harms the political utility of the word for the feminist movement. COS has worked for the CDC in the past, and there is suspicion that the NISVS inexplicable reluctance to fully acknowledge male victims of female rapists may be caused by the researchers' desire to protect the feminist narrative that rape is a tool of male oppression. Quote, "These often do not define important terms such as made to penetrate or sexual coercion and rely heavily on the unreliable lifetime statistics. However, they are informative because they show you how the CDC wants you to interpret the NISVS findings and what talking points it wants the media to regurgitate." Before moving into this next article, I need to highlight that coercion can include a male being threatened by the allegation of rape or a sexual assault claim, whether implied, stated, or assumed by the male. This next article I'm going to read from still gives a feminist narrative by giving credit to feminism for exposing males being victims by females. As I've just shown, this is far from the truth. Quote, "In 2014, we published a study on sexual victimization of men, finding that men were much more likely to be victims of sexual abuse than was thought. To understand who was committing the abuse, we next analyzed 4 surveys conducted by the Bureau of Justice Statistics, BJS, and the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, to glean an overall picture of how frequently women were committing sexual victimization. The results were surprising. For example, the CDC's nationally representative data revealed that over a 1 year, men and women were equally likely to experience non-consensual sex, and most male victims reported female perpetrators. Over their lifetime, 79% of men who were made to penetrate someone else, a form of rape in the view of most researchers, reported female perpetrators. Likewise, most men who experienced sexual coercion and unwanted sexual contact had female perpetrators. Quote, "And because we had previously shown that nearly 1 million incidences of sexual victimization happen in our nation's prisons and jails each year, we knew that no analysis of sexual victimization in the U.S. would be complete without the look at sexual abuse happening behind bars. We found, contrary to assumptions, the biggest threat to women serving time does not come from male correctional staff. Instead, female victims are more than 3 times likely to experience sexual abuse by other women inmates than male staff." Quote, "Also surprisingly, women inmates are more likely to be abused by other inmates than are male inmates, disrupting the long-held view that sexual violence in prison is mainly about men assaulting men. In juvenile correctional facilities, female staff are also much more significant threat than male staff. More than 9 in 10 juveniles who reported staff sexual victimization were abused by women." Quote, "Professionals in the mental health, social work, public health, and criminal justice often downplay female perpetration, but in fact, victims of female perpetrated sexual violence suffer emotional and psychological harm, just like victims of male perpetrated abuse. And when professionals fail to take victimization by women seriously, this not only compounds victim suffering by minimizing the harm they experience." So I have shown police being forced to reopen old sexual assault cases that were deemed to have no merit, which means anything else they did in the past must be reopened due to incompetence. I also show why police are being forced to do this with the make-believe narratives by feminism. Do you remember the 2 questions at the start of this video? Will old cases of false accusers who were not prosecuted for lying be reopened? And will cases of male victims of sexual crimes by women be reopened? I will tie all this into my personal ongoing case, as everything connects to what I have been going through for the past 5+ years, as well as the incident in the park not too long ago. Why was a December 2012 false allegation acted on and the police did not want to speak to me then? Because the feminist narrative would have me deemed guilty because I am male. So the question to pin anything on me became a mission by everyone. Why did the 2 officers do street justice on me because of the female? Because, simply, they thought they were doing the right thing because I am male, accused by a female. Addressing another alleged suspicion of criminal activity, although argued by those who support the following, in which I have no interest in, why did the officers attempt to use prostitution to discredit me? Because feminism would have any kind of male sexuality as dirty, bad, and sick. And the fact a male has needs implies a male paying for sex is taking advantage of the female, which is backwards to how it actually is. Why would the courts continue their malicious prosecution, fake trial, and wrongful conviction of me? At first, because my being male must mean I'm guilty of something, with the assumption that the two nitwit officers wouldn't be wrong about anything, because the feminist narrative that my being male means I am guilty whether I did something or not. Then, at whatever point they realized their mistakes, it was too late for them to turn back and do the right thing. So, to avoid any liability, they continued to fight against doing the right thing. I urge you to read the articles I briefly referred to and set aside any biases in favor of feminism. Once you step back and observe how society has been molded to suit the batshit crazy females of feminism, you will never be able to unsee it. Thank you to all the good women who speak for men's rights, as whatever we invented and built was for you. Thanks for watching. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share.